Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I'm going to be giving you the biggest secret to crossing the top 1% threshold of chess. Chess is hard. Most of you who are watching this are probably rated around, if I had to guess, like 1,000 rapid. But there's good news, because you've got plenty of more rating points to go. And the biggest thing you're going to have to improve in order to become a strong intermediate and advanced player is the endgame. So in this video, I'm going to show you 2 games. And from those 2 games, hopefully you learn a couple of things. And if you don't learn a couple of things, hopefully you just have a very nice time and you just smile watching this entire video. Obviously, I'm on my travel setup. I don't usually make videos from a place that looks like this. Sorry if there's any technical issues as always. And let's get into the games. Actually, both of these games were played in the Women's World Chess Championship, which are from the last 2 days. These are very, very high-level chess games between 2 of the best women in the world, Zhu Wenjun and Tan Zhongyi. And these are games 2 and 3. The first game was a draw. And both of these games made it into an endgame. And I want you to really pay close attention. Like, if you want to become a really, really good player, you got to look at stuff like this. There's only so many times the opening is going to win you, games within 10 moves. So first, we're going to look at the game where Tan Zhongyi had the white pieces, and then we're going to look at the game where Tan Zhongyi had the black pieces, and Zhu Wenjun had the white pieces. This first game, Tan Zhongyi opened with the English opening. And again, that's not going to be that important to us, although I will guide you through the game, obviously. Zhu Wenjun played knight f6. And the players played this 4-knight system. This is a very, very common system. It's been played, 1.5 million times. And basically, white takes the center with a flank pawn. Black actually takes the center with a center pawn. And the major question is whether or not, black is going to play this move d5 and how black is going to develop the pieces a little bit later. The main line here nowadays is some form of like e3. There's like an a3 in there sometimes, and white generally tries to play for d4. Tan Zhongyi plays g3, which is a very natural move because you want to put your bishop on the g2 square, and from there you want to control the center with the bishop. And now the most common move here for black is to just take the center right away. I mean, look at the way Zhu Wenjun is playing. 2 knights in the center and 2 pawns. And if you're watching this and you don't play chess like this, and you play chess however you want to play chess, you should probably start playing chess like this. Pawn takes, knight takes, and the bishop goes to the g2 square. It's very common for master level players oftentimes to leave the tension among pieces, provided that they have proper defense. Like, neither side is taking. Whereas amateurs and even intermediate players would just immediately take something. These players don't do that. Black plays bishop c5, both sides castle, and still you see the knights are just having a staring contest, right? Like, they're both protected. Neither side really wants to budge until one side commits something to try to induce the other into capturing. Black keeps waiting, plays the move h6, not really doing anything. And now white decides, like, now is the time to take, because now I've made all the necessary preparations. And I'm, potentially going to put pressure on the queen here, which is why this trade happens. That's why Tan Zhongyi here plays the move bishop to d2. The idea is quite simple. She wants to put a rook on c1. Maybe she wants to put the bishop on the c3 square. And from the c3 square, her bishop and her knight would both be targeting this pawn, which would be able to be captured because you would have the discovered attack on the queen. But overall, the position's equal, and Zhu Wenjun just moves out of the way and goes to the d6 square. Right? White just keeps improving, and now she's going to wrap the knight back this way to bring the knight forward and create some forward, attacking ideas. You'll notice that the master level chess and intermediate level chess, very, very different, very slow. Nobody's winning or losing the game in 15 moves here at this kind of caliber. But we're going to get into the good stuff. Black continues to get the queen out of the way. White plays this move knight d2, and now black jumps in with the move knight d4. Knight d4 is a really odd move because, you would think that here white can just simply play this move e3 and the knight just has to go. We're going to get there in a moment. Another thing that black wants to do is fight off this bishop. Obviously, this is white's best piece. A piece that can see the entire board, basically, and puts pressure on the opposite corner of the board is going to be a very, very good piece. So black's got an idea here to play this move c6, and if black could have it her way, she would probably put a bishop here, put a queen here, and trade off white's bishop completely. Like, these are sort of the silent conversations happening in a chess game between all the different pieces. So white plays this move e3, in fact, And now we get the point, right? Like we see why Ju Wenjun did this. She wanted to wrap the knight backwards to b5 and get white's dark squared bishop on the c3 square. And that's fine. Actually, Tan Zhongyi does not care. She plays a4. She even says, go ahead and take it. And we get this position. And this is a really fascinating position because traditional wisdom tells you, well, black has the bishops, right? You're sort of taught like the bishop pair is important in chess and you should generally try to go for it. It's true, but then you have to compare the quality of your bishops. This bishop is sort of stuck defending this pawn, and this bishop can't really do anything because white has 5 out of 7 of her pawns on the dark squares. And you will notice master level players do this all the time. White has a light squared bishop, but that means white's pawn structure is on a different color complex. If you've already paying attention, you should have learned like 3 or 4 things, right? And so white maybe will try to push for d4 as well to have 6 out of 7 pawns on dark squares to try to fight off the dark squared bishop. Black finishes her plan with pawn to c6, and Tan Zhongyi plays a5, very nice idea. And guess what? After she plays a5, if she plays this pawn here, she has 7 pawns on dark squares. So she's really, really, really limiting the scope of that bishop, while also potentially expanding the pawn to a6, which softens up these pawns for her bishop. So the quality of white's pieces is simply better than the quality of black's pieces. But you still have to play chess. Queen goes to b3, targeting the weak pawn on b7. Black defends it with rook b8. I mean, overall, the position is better for white very slightly, but probably should be around equal. And now this knight goes to e4, and maybe she's going to play d4, maybe not. She ends up trading the knight for the bishop and playing d4 like this. So again, the whole point of this video, the secret to getting to 2000 and master level is the endgame, and we are heading there. We see the early signs. We see the queens, the rooks, the bishops. We see the early signs. As you get into an endgame as an intermediate or advanced player, you've got to look at the possibility of how you're going to activate your pieces, and you have to look at the possibility of how to create weaknesses with your pawns. So in this particular case, these are the weaknesses in black's position. So white will probably go rook b1 or rook d1. Rook b1 or rook d1. And you have to anticipate where the board is going to open up. Is it going to open up on the d file? Is it going to open up on the e file? How are you going to create winning chances? Pawn takes b6. Another idea in the long run could be to play a6 just to try to get rid of that pawn, but getting rid of that pawn, if you don't have a very easy plan, will not be so simple. So she trades, and this ends up opening up the a file for an infiltration and also targeting of the b6 pawn. Bishop goes to e6, queen a4, and rook b1. You see white visually looks like she's putting a lot of pressure. Rook is active, other rook is active, queen is on a powerful square. I would still argue the white bishop is better than the black bishop, but it's kind of getting close. The computer here is completely unafraid, and Ju Wenjun offering a dark squared bishop trade, and now we get a big trade into this position. Overall, black has done a good job. Like overall, she has actually neutralized Tan Zhongyi very nicely. But I already said, this video is about the endgame. This video is not some opening gambits, tricks, or anything like that. This is pure endgame stuff. Okay, so active pieces. Obviously, white is winning the battle of the active pieces. Rook on the 7th rank or the 2nd rank of the white pieces, very important for the endgame. Most powerful place a rook can be. And so if white were to put the rook on e1 and e7, black would be in a lot of trouble. White would have a tremendous amount of activity. Now you also look at the pawns. White can potentially use this majority in the center and create a pass pawn. Next thing about the endgame, the activity of the king, especially when there's no queens on the board. White's king is just close to the center. White's king could walk into the center of the board. Black's king can't even cross off the 2nd rank because of white's rooks. The computer evaluates it as equal, but the players don't play this position with an evaluation bar. So Ju Wenjun plays b5, and white plays rook e1 to try to go rook e7. Now Ju Wenjun has to trade a pair of rooks because white is just too active. That happens. Still, black is doing fine, but it's not so simple because white is going to run the king to the middle, put a lot of pressure on these pawns, and in the long run try to complicate things. King f3, and this is the position. So both sides have passed pawns. Objectively, it's still equal. But how? White is going to run the king and push the pawn, and it's not easy at all to figure out what black is going to do. And if anything, white will put the rook on b7. So another thing about rooks is that they like to be behind enemy pawns, because from there the pawn can never go forward. Whereas if the rook was standing like here, it would just be blocking the pawn physically, but soon it would get exhausted. King f8, rook b7, and Ju Wenjun does everything right. She's actually playing very good defense. She's trying to create practical problems, but ultimately her rook gets into a little bit of an awkward position. Remember, rooks like to be behind pawns. Rooks like to be active on the 2nd rank. Here, the rook is doing neither of those things. It hasn't infiltrated the opponent's territory. It's not behind any pawns. It's kind of in no man's land. And suddenly it doesn't have a way to go. It doesn't have anywhere to go. And this small reroute costs her significantly. Because white's got a very easy plan. Advance, 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 win the pawn, and keep pushing forward. And I think somewhere here, black realized, wait a minute, I'm in severe trouble. I'm going to try to bring my king, and it takes 40 moves. But suddenly, not only is she losing the pawn, white also has a passed pawn and a more active rook. And Tan Zhongyi is going to demonstrate, right, her whole point. Now black gets, it took black some time. She got the rook out, right? She diverted the rook just like an airplane. She got the pawn on h2, but it's not good enough because white's rook has infiltrated, white's king is more active, white's pawn is more active. And ultimately, she does create a bit of counterplay, but white is just in time. King goes to d7, pawn goes to d6, pawn is promoting. King is doing what's called shouldering, like in rugby or in American football, kind of shoulder the opponent away from you. And another place a rook doesn't want to be is behind its own pawn or in front of its own pawn, right? Look at white's rook. Perfectly positioned, putting a lot of pressure on this pawn, not letting the black rook go anywhere. White's pawn makes it all the way to the bottom of the board. Still looks like black might have some hope, but there is no hope. Rook here, king goes to e7. You shielded the rook from the check. The pawn is promoting. If the black rook moves anywhere, you're just going to lose the pawn. And this was a fantastic endgame masterclass of the world championship contender Tan Zhongyi. Just amazing, amazing quality. And if you want to get better at chess, like this is the phase of the game that's going to make or break. You know, I see a lot of intermediate endgames that are just so chaotic. You just give a million checks, you just push pawns. Here, white demonstrated the perfect coordination of active rook play, centralizing the king, advancing the pawn forward. It was a very high-level game. Very, very high-level game. Now, in the next game, we got another endgame. This time, the colors were flipped. So let's see if Tan Zhongyi can replicate the same thing, but this time with the black pieces, or if this time, Ju Wenjun with the white pieces is going to win herself an endgame. So, in the first game of this match, it was a Taimanov Sicilian. Rather, it was a 4-knight Sicilian. It was a Paulson Sicilian. And then black put a knight on f6 and a knight on c6. Black got to put both knights into the center of the board. It's called the 4-knight Sicilian. This time, Ju Wenjun plays c4 before she plays the move d4. And here I was quite surprised because black spent 4 minutes on her next move. And I was like, what was she expecting to happen? But after d4, you can't quite play knight f6 again. I mean, you can, but it's a different system. In the first game of the match, black played knight f6 first, and because of that, white had to play knight c3 and never got to move her pawn to c4, and this time she absolutely got to move her pawn to c4. So Tan Zhongyi gets slightly move ordered and takes a different setup, entirely. She plays bishop b4 and knight to e7, which is definitely a way to play the position, although the knight going to f6 is by far more popular. This is like less than 1% of the games in this position, and now black obviously showing the entire purpose of the opening is to put the pawn on d5. I've already said this is not really the point of the video. Like, the point of the video is to maybe sprinkle in a little bit of these, nuggets of wisdom about, openings, but you're gonna see we're gonna get to an endgame very quickly in this game. There's a lot of trades. This is the position. White has, again, the bishop pair. Last time it was black having the bishop pair and not really being able to utilize it. This is a weakness for black. This is a weakness for white. They might trade off, and then we're going to be left with, A and then F, G, H. So there's not going to be much imbalance in the position, but we're still going to get an endgame. So just pay attention. Rook C8, Queen A4, white goes back, and we're going to see in this game how Ju Wenjun does what's called, like, massaging the position. She's just going to make small moves, small improvements, poke at the black position. And again, we're going to see concepts from the previous game. Active pieces, pawn structure, targeting the pawns, right? White is putting the rooks in the middle. Now she's going to move the bishops, and then the rooks are going to open up and blossom. Tan Zhongyi here plays queen d6. She gambits a pawn, gives a pawn away on a5. But she comes here, wins the pawn on a2. Meanwhile, white is like, hey, I want you to take my queen. Why? Because if you take my queen, this pawn improves into a passed pawn. And that pawn is going to have a promotion control of the dark square bishop. And I'll put my rook on b1, and I'm going to move my b pawn all the way up the board. Moves like bishop f4 will increase your rating by a couple hundred points because you're going to be able to control exchanges. You're going to be able to control transformations of the position. In this case, seeing how a pawn that will become an outside pawn will pose problems. That's why black plays queen c6. Black says, I don't want to trade. Now the bishop goes to b5, kind of whacking around the queen. Rook goes to e2. You know what the idea of rook e2 is? She wants to trade the rooks. And then after she trades the rooks, she wants to trade the queen. So she wants to do the exact same thing that I just said, but she wants to have even less defenders. And just to show you what these trades would do to the black position, like rook trade is okay. This trade is nearly losing. Look at the evaluation. It skyrockets. Because suddenly, you don't have a defender. You're not able to block the pawn. The pawn is going to get a lot of escort. I don't even think that's a word. I don't know. Why did I say that? I think I meant to say the pawn is going to have a lot of support in getting escorted up the board. I just decided to, fuse it into one word. And that's why black doesn't want to enter this position, because it would be a nightmare. Rook a8. Black trying to keep, by the way, we're seeing it again, rook on the second rank. See, I'm trying to share with you the endgame secrets that make these players great, right? You need to adapt this stuff to your toolbox. Rook a1, black staying active, trying to trade rooks, but only on her terms. So her rook infiltrates, and black is still not trading the queen. By the way, there is just a free queen there. You are not seeing that incorrectly, but white would have problems on the last rank. Rook e1. Rook takes. Queen d8. We just talked about keeping pieces active. Black needs to very quickly get back into the game. Putting a piece on the home square in the middle of a game like this might not prove fruitful. h3. Always good to just make sure you're not going to get back rank mated. Queen f6. Rook e1. The game just keeps going. I mean, white just keeps making moves, right? White is just playing chess. Bishop e5. Bishop a6 attacking the rook. Bishop f4. Trying to hope that at some point black is going to be careless, right? Like, look, black is very passive now. The rook has to, sort of stand by the king, but how is white going to actually break through? Rook d1. Queen g5. Bishop takes. Okay. Chu and Jun corralled the position in such a way that black doesn't really have an easy way to protect the center pawn. And now bishop takes d5. But here comes an amazing move. Knight e3. This gets a brilliant move because you have an attack on the bishop. If you take here, black takes on d5 and creates checkmate problems. So the only move here for white is the amazing move h4, defended by the queen. Incredible piece coordination. And we're going to get to an endgame in a moment, and here it is. So this is a different endgame. Rooks and bishops are important here, right? Last time it was just the rooks. And I don't know if you hear footsteps in the background. I think Benji is coming to take a look at the endgame as well. Now, this is no secret. This pawn is going to go up the board. Now, one other thing you have to know about endgames is the way they simplify. So in this endgame, rook, if they're traded, the chance that this becomes a draw becomes like over 90%. Opposite colored bishop endgames with just one extra pawn are almost always drawn at high level, at a good level of chess. Because what ends up happening is this pawn can't ever queen. Black simply blockades it on the light squares, and because white's bishop is a dark squared bishop, it's unable to help. It also helps that all these pawns are on the same side of the board. If white had another pawn, let's say on A, right, and then it would go up, it would be a lot harder to defend the position for black. Could just be unsavable. So now watch, as white just takes her time, right, keeps the pieces exactly where they are, keeps an active rook, doesn't allow white to really move, doesn't allow black to really move, keeps an eye on her pawns, and now has to do exactly what was done to her, but in the second game. Just massaging, bringing the king. Notice how black puts everything on a light square. Perfect defense. There's no way that white is going to be able to attack those pawns with the bishop or with the rook. So how are you going to win this position? King f4, g3, solid. Rook back to b4, and at some point she's going to have to start pushing the pawn. At some point, right? If you tell me right now white can't ever push the c pawn, okay, there it is. And now the pawn goes up 2 squares. It was always going to go up 2 squares. I mean, you weren't going to really be able to stop it. Now it's gone up 2 squares. Black still can't really defend against it by capturing it, but black can sort of stop it, not let it move forward. Okay, let's see. Bishop d5. King f4. Okay. And now apparently bishop c6, an inaccurate move. You apparently had to play a move like rook e2 or rook a6. Because after bishop c6, apparently you don't have time to defend everything correctly. White now walks the king to g5. I mean, everything makes sense. White is moving the king to f6, but black's just going to go here. You're still not going to be able to win the pawn. Rook a4, offering a trade of rooks. We've talked about this. Trading the rook should be a draw. In fact, this looks like you're almost forcing it, but now there's a check, and now the rook gets out of the way. Very instructive. Everything is active. Rook d2 is coming, king f6 is coming, but how is white actually winning the game? Like, okay, black is defending everything, right? Bishop f4, okay. Bishop e3, and now the rook infiltrates. And you start realizing the way white is going to win this game, there is a hidden high-level concept here. Sometimes when you have an extra pawn in an endgame like this, and you have more active pieces, there is a domino that collapses in the opposing position, and that symbolizes the end of the game. And that domino is this pawn, obviously. But we've already talked about the fact that the bishop is always going to defend it. So what is white going to possibly do? Well, white can get the king to f6 and the rook to f8 and sacrifice the rook on f7. And if that domino falls and the bishop takes and the king takes, you immediately think, what? You leave the enemy with a rook for a bishop? Yes, because of the perfect coordination of the white position. Everything in white's position is defended. So it's impossible for black to create any counterplay. And if the white king gets here, the white king is going to get there. The white king is probably going to get there. And then black loses every single pawn. So that is the lingering, looming threat of the position. She's going to continue to attack, and that's why now black plays like this. Rook d6, rook c2, and the king goes all the way to g7. That's the point. It's going to take a little bit of time. You get the king out. Now you play f3. You don't let the black king get close. But because black decided that they were going to defend this pawn, the white pawn is now going 2 squares away from promotion, and the king has made it to g7. So where's the winning idea? Well, the winning idea is actually also hidden in the position because maybe you can walk the king around, which is pretty crazy. You managed to go around the entire board. Bishop b6, c7, 1 square away from promotion. And now she plays rook a6. Look at this. Look at this epic king walk. Pawn takes h4. And there's just nothing black can do. Black just can't protect against both threats of promotion. And in this position, Tan Zhongyi resigned because she simply cannot stop the pawn. Now, again, the way that she did it in this game, she ended up moving the bishop back to the e6 square. There was a hidden kind of thing in the position where it could have been possible for white to get to f6. Like, let's say if the black king was on e4, just very hypothetically, like rook f8, king e4, king f6, bishop d5. If this king was precariously positioned, there would be chances for white to sacrifice that rook. Maybe not at this exact moment, because black would be able to come back and play defense. But if the king was on c6, like this is just an easy win. This is what I was demonstrating. Now, if the king is on f5, white can go king e7, king d6, and try to promote the pawn. And it's still maybe even winning for white, because black just can't break through at all. So 2 very high-level endgames by both of the Chinese women. And the match was all squared up. It's 1.5, 1.5 after 3 games. But this is really the secret right here. Piece play, an active piece play of rooks, bishops, knights, which weren't really featured in this video, kings. We see, look at the role of the king in the endgame. As in this endgame, the white king literally walked through the entire black position. It hiked all the way to the opposite side of the board. Pawn play, the placement of pawns, how outside past pawns and pawns further away from the center kind of dictate the defense. Very instructive. And this is the stuff you have to improve on if you want to be a really good player, or in this case, compete for the world championship. So I'm going to rest my voice. Obviously, I'm like recovering from a cold. I've been coughing for a few days. Tomorrow, if you're a daily viewer of the channel, we begin Freestyle Grand Slam Tour event number 2 in Paris, France. Big stuff happening there. Like Hans Niemann is not participating. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, got 2 big events here in April 2025, which we'll be covering. Get out of here.